Hello, my name is Martin Aston. For the last 15 years or so, I've been leading a large number of ambitious research projects aimed at improving the engineering process through the adoption of digital technologies. Today, I'm going to talk about how important that improvement to the engineering process is in achieving net zero, but also give you an insight into the Bruno challenge, which will help us actually achieve that ambition. So as I was saying, achieving net zero is extremely complex. Even though a product itself may not emit any zero emissions locally, for example, an electric car, when we consider the entire ecosystem that goes with that product in terms of its operation, its manufacture, its distribution, we find it's a very different situation. So we need to understand the performance of that ecosystem as a whole. There's a lot of talk about system of systems, and that system of systems has many complex interactions, many interdependencies that have involved very dissimilar products, different companies, different organizations, and even different cultures. So each one of those interface points will need to interact as efficiently and effectively as possible. So in that system of systems, we're finding cases where technological, commercial, and regulatory integration is essential. I'll come back to this later and show you a worked example of this and why it is so complex and why achieving net zero is such a challenge. And many industrial sectors are going to have to find themselves in a situation where they're moving from evolution of existing products to revolution if we're to achieve these very ambitious targets. That makes the challenge even more difficult. So something that's already complex is made even more complex by the need to actually deliver radically different products very quickly. And actually predicting the performance of those products, how are they going to deliver the necessary environmental impact improvement? How do we actually prove they do that, validate them, and demonstrate them within that entire ecosystem is going to be extremely complex. But the only way we're going to deliver net zero is if we can actually achieve that. So a transformational change in engineering is absolutely essential if we're to achieve that ambition. It's worth just spending a couple of minutes explaining what engineering is, because I think engineering is a very misunderstood word. It's a misunderstood discipline. Many people think that an engineer is someone who comes and mends your boiler, but that couldn't be further from the truth. At its core, engineering is the conversion of knowledge to useful things. So as we see here, engineers take a knowledge of science, they apply both creativity and mathematical processes, and using that, they deliver transformative products, but also transformative services. So at its core, it's a very intellectual, but also a creative discipline. When we go back to the ambitions of net zero, science has set the agenda that we need to address, but science in itself cannot deliver the solution. It's engineering and engineers that will actually deliver the products, deliver the services that actually address the climate change problem. So I said earlier that we'd show a worked example of this so-called system of systems and how difficult it will be to achieve net zero. So the example I've shown here is of a hydrogen-powered aircraft. So a hydrogen-powered aircraft at source, at its point of use, will be zero carbon emission. But that's only a very small part of the overall equation. So starting on the left, if we're to generate the hydrogen, we need to generate a lot of power. The actual process of producing hydrogen is very energy intensive. And so we need to look at new ways, new clean ways of generating the power to actually deliver that hydrogen. Then there's the hydrogen production process itself. That will absorb energy. We have to distribute it to the point where it's needed. So not many airports at the moment have hydrogen supplies. And so there's something there that needs to be addressed. We need to also distribute the power that goes with it as well. And then there's the airport, there's the ground operations, there's the surface transport getting to the airport. If we have a zero emission aircraft but continue to use diesel buses or diesel cars to get to and from the airport, then we're not going to achieve that net zero ambition. And then on the right-hand side, we need to consider the actual raw materials that go to actually produce that product, the actual distribution of those, because they come from all over the world. We need to consider the production process. We need to consider how we actually distribute those components and then assemble them into the vehicle itself. And then finally, when we get to the end of the life of that product, we need to consider how we actually dispose of it. So as you can see, this achieving net zero is far from developing just the zero emission product. It's actually understanding how that product fits within an entire production, operation, and disposal ecosystem. And that's going to require a very, very different approach to engineering to what we have today. So how are we going to deliver the answer to this challenge? Well, currently we're working on establishing a very ambitious program known as Bruno Challenge. It's a national program of engineering transformation. It's involving all key industrial sectors. As you saw in the example before, what starts off as an aerospace challenge is very quickly a power generation, a surface transport, as well as an aerospace problem. What we aim to do with Bruno Challenge is to provide industry with the people and the processes to accelerate the development of that generation of products needed to achieve net zero. It's important to note there that a key part of this is people. People are where the innovation happens. People are where the good ideas come from. And we need to understand how to best use people within that transformational process. But we're going to embrace digitalization to make that a reality. This isn't just a case of digitizing today's process. It's looking at transformational change through digitalization. Consider the transformation of going from a landline phone to social media, and you get an understanding of the level of transformation we need to see in engineering. And we're going to make full use of existing and emerging research ecosystems to support that delivery. So if we look at the Harwell EnergyTec cluster, that is an ideal way to actually engage both industrial and government organizations. And the living laboratory will give us an opportunity to actually test, validate, and actually showcase both innovative technologies, but also innovative processes as well. So to summarize, re-engineering engineering is essential if we're to deliver to the net zero ambition. As you've seen, the system of systems needed to achieve that will require far greater integration as well as technological innovation. An evolution of today's engineering processes will not suffice. Only transformational change will deliver what we need to achieve. Thank you very much for listening and enjoy the rest of the event.